Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. Today's video takes us out to Chapel Hill Cemetery, which is located just outside the town of Charlotte, North Carolina. And we are here because I want to talk about the end of watch for Sheriff Jackson Stanland. He was the sheriff of Brunswick County during the year of 1908. Sheriff Jackson Stanland was a very prominent and respected man in the town. His census records indicate he had occupations such as turpentine distiller and merchant. A lot of times, I guess people could have other occupations besides just being the sheriff. He had a family. He had a large family. He had a wife named Minnie, and he had 7 children. So, Sheriff Jackson Stanland had to issue a warrant and take in a man who was accused of breaking into stores in Charlotte. And he put together a posse of himself and 3 men, John Robinson, James Long, and Ayers White. And they went to about 4 miles south of Charlotte to a place called Little Charlotte to arrest a man named Jesse Walker. Now, Jesse Walker, he had a past. He had a very lengthy history and of law-breaking, mischievous deeds, swindling people, cheating, lying, a lot of things. He was a military deserter, and he had stolen things from other people. But he had married a very beautiful young lady named Rosa Lee, and she was the daughter of a man named Frank Leonard, who was a good family. Frank Leonard Sr., it was his daughter. And they had came back to Brunswick County and settled for a while. And they had a little baby girl who was about a year old when this incident occurred, and her name was Clara. So Jesse's at home, and here comes the Sheriff Stanland and the posse to arrest him. Well, Jesse wasn't going to go easy, and he took out his army revolver and he began firing. And when he shot Sheriff Stanland, and he hit him in the kidney. Sheriff Stanland was taken to Mr. James Williams's house, and he was attended to by 3 physicians, but he eventually succumbed to his injuries, and he passed away on November the 30th, 1908, which was one day after this. Now, Frank Leonard Jr., who was Jesse's brother-in-law, and a man named Dudley were also arrested that day because they were considered accomplices in the store break-in. And they were all 3 taken down to the jail in Southport. Now, the jail still stands today. You can visit it. Well, Jesse, he decides in January 29th, 1909, so a couple months after this, he wasn't going to stay in jail anymore, and he escaped. He overwhelmed a guard and took off, and he went out west. He ended up in the state of Oklahoma. And he hooked up with 2 other men, and they decide they're going to rob a train. And in the process of trying to rob this train, he ended up shooting a Constable Kirk. Now, it's also important to note here that Jesse changed his name while he was out west in Oklahoma. He called himself Paul Williams. So he shoots this Constable Kirk, and he gets arrested again, and he serves 4 years in Oklahoma for this murder. So now, fast forward, you're in 1919. So he's in Oklahoma jail, and he gets wind that he's getting divorced. Rosa is divorcing him. So he don't like that. So what does Jesse, a.k.a. Paul Williams, what does he decide to do? He escapes. He breaks out again. This time he comes back to North Carolina. I guess he was going to go talk Rosa out of it or find out what was going on. Who knows what was going on in his mind. But either way, he showed up, and when he did, they caught him, and they put him back in jail, and he was finally sentenced to 30 years for the murder of Sheriff Stanland. Now, Rosalie and Clara had grown up a little bit at this time. Clara, by the way, she lived to be 11, and she passed away at 11 of scarlet fever. So he got put back in jail in North Carolina, and he was sentenced to 30 years for the murder of Sheriff Stanland. And what I've read, that he was sent to a prison camp, western North Carolina. I've also read that he was sent up near Raleigh. Now, to me, Raleigh's not really western, but maybe during those days when people didn't travel as much, they considered that west. Either way, he was up, not in this area, he was up further. And he stayed about 4 years up there, and he decided to escape from there. So he left there, and that time he went south, and he ended up in Gulfport, Mississippi. So he ends up in Gulfport, Mississippi, and he changes his name again. This time he changes it to Frank Manning. And he changes more than just his name. He changed everything. He became a new man. He went the straight and narrow. He remarried. He married a woman named Frances Britt. And he opened up a store, a jewelry store. And they said he repaired clocks. And he lived a life of the straight and narrow, law-abiding, no trouble whatsoever. And he lived there like that for 16 years. But as he got older, his conscience began to weigh on him, and his guilt started to eat away at his heart. And he said that God told him and talked to him, and he knew that he needed to atone, I suppose, for his sins, and he had to return back to North Carolina and face the music, face the punishment. So he told his wife he had to go do something, and she said, okay. And he left, and he came back, and they said when he walked in, and he says, I'm Jesse Walker, that the warden said, I know who you are. So he returned back in April 1935, and what ended up happening was the governor was so impressed by his repentant nature that the governor pardoned him. He pardoned him for the killing of Sheriff Jackson Stanland. And since he had been identified and they knew that he had killed Constable Kirk in Oklahoma and had escaped that jail sentence, he was sent back to Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma governor pardoned him there too. So what ended up happening was he returned back to Mississippi, and he lived out the rest of his life. And that's what happened to Jesse Walker. But that's not the end of the story. Sheriff Stanlon was 46 years old when he was killed in the line of duty. He left behind a wife, Minnie, and his 7 children. Minnie died a few years after Sheriff Stanlon, which left the 7 children orphaned. Their entire lives were turned upside down because of what had happened to their father. There's more to this story than just what happened with Jesse Walker. If you'd like to hear more, then please leave a comment, and I'll be happy to do a part 2. Other than that, I wish you all a very good day, and I want you to keep seeking. Take care. Bye-bye.